That's the irony.
Have that.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Good evening. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order the Lakewood City Council study session on March 9th, 2026 to order. The first item of business will be Lakewood Station Access Improvement Update. Troy Pokswinski, Capital Projects Manager, will go through. I believe he has a slideshow for us.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I brought with me tonight Eric Swanstrom, one of the civil engineers here at the city, to kind of go through the update for the Lakewood Station access improvement. So we'll go through a brief history, very brief history, kind of go through some of the individual components of the program that Sound Transit has, and then give you an update on where we sit today. With that, see if this thing is going to work for me today. Here we go. So a background for the Lakewood Station Access Improvement. This is a function or a portion of the ST2 authorized by voters in 2008. Actually, it's one of the last portions of ST2. The funds need to be spent by December of 2030. The project or the program has two priorities with it. I'll dive into that a little bit here more. The priority one are the dark blue on this schematic. They consist of 9 projects. Priority 2 cannot be started until priority 1 is completed. They're the light blue on this. There's 4 projects or 4 sub-projects, if you will. I believe I split out 2 projects in the, I think it's the Springbrook neighborhood. Yeah, I do. Springbrook neighborhood has the 3, San Francisco, Boston, and Chicago, and then 47th and McCord down there at the southeast corner of the city. Kind of going through each of the projects, we started work on New York first, New York and McCord, as it's got the railway bridge, or excuse me, the freeway bridge over I-5 that we're doing. So we want to make sure that we gave ourselves ample time, and we're in the midst of that with WashDOT for design review. Second project we have is actually under construction right now. It's the 112th Street, Gravely Lake to Bridgeport job. Eric will fill you in a little bit more on that here in just a minute. Third project, Kendrick Street from 111th to 108th. Again, Eric will fill you in as we want to really take as part of this update, give you an idea of what's going on in the station district. Fourth project, 111th from Bridgeport to 112th, kind of the S-turn there we have. He'll fill you in a little bit more on that one, as well as 115th from Bridgeport to the Sound Transit right away. The 6th project on the list is the Lincoln Avenue from McCord to San Francisco. We're getting started on that later this year for design. We have a small implementation of an expansion of the right turn pocket from Pack Highway onto Bridgeport to allow for buses. That turns a little tight for some of the larger Pierce Transit buses through there to run now. The Clover Creek Drive connection from basically Clover Creek Drive or Dianza Park Drive to Pack Highway. We don't do the portion in red that Sound Transit is doing through the railway. They're still at the 30% design threshold, so we're holding this for another year for design, as we don't know fully where we're connecting yet, and that's critical for their connection point. The last of the priority ones is 47th, and we have begun work on that. We will get a supplement from WashDOT, from Sound Transit to do the work. The original scope of the grant agreement we signed with Sound Transit in August of 2024 did not include this. So there'll be a supplement for $2 to $3 million on top of the $31 million for the bridge over I-5 that we're currently designing. Last of the priority 2s is first of the priority 2s is the San Francisco, Chicago, and Boston. And then we also do the Davison road connections from Davison Highland from 112th to 108th. We've got the 47th and McCord Drive, and finally, the last project that we're doing is 111th from 60th to Highland. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Eric to kind of go over the 112th where he's at currently.
Thank you. So 112th, just as you noticed, has been ripped up for a few weeks. They're moving along quickly. They're anticipating a pave date late March, early April. So they're moving along quickly. Storm drainage is done. Conduit for street lighting is in. And liquid water is done with their main. They have a few tie-ins to do. But they're moving along, getting out of our way, and like I said, contractors should be paving late March, early April. So for Kendrick Street, that's the project I'm currently working on. We're at about 60% design. And it's in the Station District, and what we're intending to construct is we're going to widen the roadway, add 6-foot bike lanes, a 3.5-foot landscape buffer, 8-foot sidewalks and street trees. And in order to accommodate this wide cross sections, we will have to remove 7 mature trees. All of them are coniferous trees, either fir or cedar, but we will be planting 46 street trees along with the project. Lakewood Water will also be replacing their main on this section, and so we'll be coming to you in the coming weeks with an interlocal agreement to have them jump in with our project to do that. As is typical of a neighborhood of this age, there are encroachments into the right of way that private property owners have constructed, which we will need to take out, to remove. We have 4 properties that have fences like this one in the right of way. And this same property has a shed in the right of way. So those will all have to be removed. In addition to the improvements that have been constructed, there are a few properties that have been using the right of way for their parking. And unfortunately, we won't be able to accommodate that street parking with these improvements. And so there's three parcels currently using the right of way for this purpose. Like I mentioned, I'm at 60% design. Our schedule is to be able to add the late second quarter of this year, with construction wrapping up before the end of the year. I'll be sending out a public flyer or project flyer for the project in the next couple of weeks. And with that, I'll be sending out notices to those individuals that have encroachments within the right of way. And I think that's all I got for Kendrick. With Kendrick, we are going to add in this small section of 111th to the bid package, so we get some economy of scale. So that would be bid together as one project. And with that, do you have anything to add, Troy? Oh, 115th. So 115th, we'll be continuing the sidewalk along the loop and then adding an enhanced crossing at Bridgeport Way. Tying into this will be a trail that the Sound Transit will be constructing that goes from the end of the cul-de-sac directly to the sounder station. Anything else?
So the last thing I do want to add is that this is not a small undertaking. This program, for the staff size that we have in the Capital Projects Division, 70% of our staff is going to be tied up with this from now until 2030 to expend the funds that we have. We roughly need to spend $800,000 a month every month between now and 2030. So that's what we are looking at. With that, we ask for any questions you guys may have.
Does anybody have any questions? Councilmember Talbot.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you both for your presentation tonight. One of the questions I had is, it looks like there's a chunk of projects I think it was 3, 4, and 5 are in that middle area where the schedule seems to overlap somewhat, where you've got timelines for, a project starting in the middle of this year and then starting another one in October. Given where we are timeline wise for the first project, 1/12, we're still not complete yet. How much do you expect holding to the timeline that are in the slides?
So we are currently on schedule. The schedule that's shown in each of these slides is for design as well as for construction. So that's when we start the project to where it's completed. I think what I showed, and even these slides, to be forthright with you, are from 2024. And I think we've held to that schedule pretty tight as it is. Yeah, we're supposed to be finishing up for most of the improvements will be done next month for 112th. This looks like it's a hair off just for public outreach and other issues we've got. We'll go into January, probably February of 27 for this one, and for this is the same timeframe. I think we're sticking to our schedule pretty tight to those ones.
Get it off my,
What?
part. The mic, yeah, this was the thing that worked the last time. Okay, as far as lighting, will we be using ped scale lighting? And then do we have a lighting standard that considers single pole, dual head, where you can get safety lighting at a higher level and then ped scale on the bottom from a single pole?
Our biggest obstacle that we have with street lighting recently has been the clearance for the overhead power lines. That's typically what we're looking for when we're doing our lighting design and everything else. And that'll be no different for this project. So when we end up with shorter poles out here, it's typically the spacing becomes much, much tighter. Instead of the 125 to 150, we start shrinking that down to 75-ish. And that's based upon overhead clearance, what we have.
Thank you. Yeah, if we can, however we can best accommodate ped scale lighting, especially in the residential areas like on Kendrick, makes sense. And then as far as procurement for all of these projects, they will all be going out for individual procurement. Do we use a bid service, or how do we advertise for major capital projects like this?
Major capital projects, we do advertise in the News Tribune and the DJC. We do a 2-week advertisement for these, and we have gotten a lot of bids recently, record bids. And our prices, for instance, on 112th, we had 19 bidders, which is a lot, and we're $900,000 under the engineer's estimate. So we're doing quite well on that.
Okay, thank you. And I asked because that's great to hear if we're getting a lot of bids for capital projects. It sounded like for the planning study raise grant, we only got 2 bids, and that was nearly $1 million project. So I was a little surprised to see that given the economic environment right now, that there wasn't more hunger out there to bid on that project. The last question I have is regarding notices. Can you tell us, or construction notices, how are we notifying the residents and the people that work and live in the residence versus just the people that own the property?
So we do a direct mailing to the property owners. And then for the area itself, social media seems to be working. We can even go beyond the actual street frontage properties and do a buffer of 100 feet or something to get the area notified. So,
And when we go to construction, typically we do an EDDM, every door direct mailer from USPS. So we select the mailings in the area plus, quite a bit. So for instance, for 112th, I think we grabbed, 2,000 people and it went out that way.
So I think the comment I want to say to that is that this is a lot of construction to take on, even in a 4 or 3 year period and whatnot. And the noticing that we provide and the information about the project that we provide upfront in our communications, including on our webpage, making sure that we have clear project web pages for each of these projects, that they're accessible and viewable on our front page, that nobody has to try to finagle to figure out and guess which tab on our website to go look under. And I do notice that on our front web page, that we don't even have a section under, I think it's business and residents for construction updates. So that would just be some feedback that I'd like to lend on that front. Thank you.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for the presentation. I think going back a number of times, the negotiating a series of projects, the breadth of which this exemplifies is good work for having been able to negotiate that with Sound Transit and getting their approval to move forward and going to be able to go and do that. And I guess that I will just start with the work that's ongoing on 112th, which is proceeding certainly on schedule, and there was some trepidation in the community because of the detour that would be required, overlapping with the detour on Nyanza. Although I haven't received from the public a lot of comments negatively about having to find an alternate route to that section of 112th. It seems to be working well, and as I travel on 108th or on Main Street, I'm not noticing that it's congested with a lot of detouring traffic, and people have figured out how they want to get to where they're going to go, and to the extent that the signage and that has worked well, and if it stays on timeline, I think we're in good shape there. And as I look at the range of the rest of the projects that you described to us, there don't seem to really be any that are going to have major detour of an arterial, with the exception of maybe that one short section of 111th that's there. So that goes on off. But I did have a couple of questions on the slides and on the around 47th Avenue. The very last thing on the bottom of the slide says, "City will now perform the bridge overcrossing of 47th and I-5." And would kind of like to understand what that means. Does that mean that the city is going to pay for, because it's not money coming from Sound Transit? And then, since that's a state piece of infrastructure, what does it mean that the city will now perform, and what is there a separate cost other than the total cost that you gave us before that goes with needing to do that? because otherwise we're creating a bunch of sidewalks to nowhere if we don't get people across the bridge to the station.
Perfect, yeah. So I mentioned that as part of the original agreement that we signed back in August of 2024, the scope for the work was for Sound Transit to perform the bridge work itself. Since we were undertaking the bridge work on New York, we will execute a supplemental agreement at the time of construction with Sound Transit for them to fully reimburse the city for the portion of that work. They want to get a little bit more firmer number from the contractor before they issue a supplement, go to their board and issue the supplement. The money is going to be funded by Sound Transit for the improvements. So basically what we're doing is we're stripping the bridge rails off and everything else, taking it down to the deck, rebuilding the deck on one side and putting a bridge rail up on the other side, a new bridge rail up on the other side. So Sound Transit will ultimately fund all of this. It just originally was not in the city's scope to do that work.
Thank you, thank you. And on numerous occasions over the years, we've gotten community feedback about the public transportation system. And obviously the whole scope of all of these is to get people to have access to the transportation elements that the sounder station provides to be able to go and do that. But I noticed that a couple of these projects, there is an impact affected on the Route 206 Pierce Transit bus, which is the bus that runs from Madigan and runs through Tillicum and then through Springbrook and ends up in the town center. And there was frequently been comments that that bus didn't make good connections other than all the way at the town center if people were trying to get to downtown Tacoma or somewhere else or even do that. And so it looks like there's a plan to reroute that bus. But do you know what the new route in the vicinity of these at the completion of the project would be for the Pierce Transit 206? It says adding a stop at the sounder station, but I don't know how that affects the rest of the route. Because right now it runs Lincoln and then Bridgeport and down to the town center.
So I do not know the new route. The terminology used in this program is strictly Pierce Transit and Sound Transit, ultimately Sound Transit's terminology. The improvements we're going to be making under the Route 206 are strictly New York Avenue and McCord, as well as Lincoln. So I don't know where the bus is eventually going to go or if that's where it remains, but that's what Sound Transit has given to us on that.
Okay, but did I not understand from the slides in the presentation that they were going to adjust that route so that that bus at least went to the sounder station on its way back from Springbrook? Or did I misinterpret that?
So the idea behind some of that Route 206 is for sidewalks to get to the bus stops, is my understanding from Sound Transit on this. I'm not 100% certain of the reasoning for they're calling it Route 206 in that regard, because ultimately if Priority 2 gets built, all of Springbrook will have sidewalks with the exception of True Lane and Detroit, which are local access streets. So I'm not certain of their terminology on why they're calling certain things certain ways.
Okay, and then where there's space in the design allowed, it looks like we're going to have planter strips and then street trees, not in the planter strips, but behind the sidewalk. Is that the most common design?
For Kendrick, the idea is to put the street trees behind the sidewalks because in the 3.5-foot planter, number one, not a great place to put a street tree in a little 3.5-foot wide section. The second reason why we wouldn't want to put that there is because there's a lot of utilities underneath that particular planter strip. So instead we'll go with shrubs and then put the trees behind the sidewalk.
Okay, and if Have we narrowed down the selection of species of trees that are going to go along these several places where trees are going to be planted?
We haven't yet, but there are overhead power lines that we have to be sensitive to, as well as some other things. That'll be developed as part of our 60 and 90% design.
Okay, and then on the 111th in Bridgeport to 112th, there were in other places it talked about that where there was street lighting on wooden poles. Okay, and that's the way that would be. And this one says no street lighting, wood poles. What's the difference between those two comments of where on some things there is street lighting that's going to go on wood poles, and this one just says no street lighting, and then parenthetically wood poles, and I'm trying to understand what that means.
Sure thing. So this does not have scope for new streetlights. It does have some wood poles at the intersections that have lights on them existing today. The intent is not to expand beyond that with the scope that we have and the funding that we have in place.
Okay. And then I think I think I had one more question if I can find my notes, just a second. Mr. Mayor, I'll just conclude that we're embarking on a long-term series of projects that are going to benefit some neighborhoods of the city that have not yet benefited from significant transportation and particularly sidewalk upgrades. That is a good thing.
Thank you, Councilmember Branstetter. Does anybody else have any questions? Councilmember Laura Sella.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hey, we got a mic that works. That's good. Thank you, Troy and Eric, for coming in. I appreciate your overview. I just had a few questions. So, Clover Creek crossing, is not starting until late 2027 into 28. I think I heard you say that's because we're dependent upon Sound Transit to figure out what they're gonna do over the railroad tracks there. We don't know what to connect to until they figure that out. Is that correct?
Correct. So we talked last week with Sound Transit. They're still at the 30% design level. They don't have any vertical or horizontal information to share with us yet. With the tight area that we're working in and really the tight area that they're working in, there's no sense in us doing much design work until 27 to get that started.
Okay, thank you. For the rest of the projects, I don't know how far along the design process we are to establish whether or not there are any oak trees coming out or any other encroachments that we haven't yet addressed. Have we looked into that for all the remaining projects?
Other than Kendrick, most of the other projects are looking pretty good, other than priority 2. We haven't looked at anything in priority 2 at all yet. The New York is probably at about 60% design level. 47th is about the same. There aren't any tree impacts for either of those two projects. Clover Creek, that's before us. I don't see a whole lot of impacts. 115th, no. I think for the most part, these are projects in areas of the city where we typically don't have a lot of trees, other than maybe some of the priority 2 stuff on some of the side streets.
Great, thank you. On the picture of the Kendrick Street right away where there was folks parking, you said that that was going to be coming out and that wouldn't be where they're parking anymore, correct? Do those apartments have other options for parking, or are we eliminating that for folks where they live?
I believe this apartment complex shown is on 109th. The section of 109th immediately to the south of this apartment complex would be, it does have a sizable right of way that would be usable for parking. Um, To be honest with you, the city has not in the past dedicated on-street parking in the right of way for anything other than a couple of special.
All right, thank you. I just want to make sure we're cognizant of if we remove parking for people who understandably, it's part of the right of way, so they don't necessarily have rights to it, but people need to get to their homes, and if they can't park within, 2 blocks, it's a challenge. Last question, you talked about how this is gonna take up 70% of the engineering staffing for the city for these projects. Do you have enough staffing to work everything else? And if not, have you looked into additional contracting to tackle other projects that may fall behind?
Kristen. Yeah, we have looked into staffing levels. Thankfully, our federal stuff that we're going through right now kind of hits at just the right time when the rest of the stuff is kind of in a lull. So we are good through 2030. We do not need any further staffing with what we have and what we currently have assigned. That does mean, however, that we're maxed out as far as if there was anything additional the council wanted to bring on an emergency, it'd be a little bit of a stretch to try to get accomplished.
All right, great, thank you.
Any other questions from members? Okay, I do want to, a couple of things. I do want to go back to the Kendrick Street that Councilmember Lauricella. How much of the parking are they losing?
How much of the parking on Kendrick?
Yeah, when I look at that thing on page 25, right there.
All of it, unfortunately.
You're going right up to the house?
Well, to the back of the parking stalls or into the parking stalls will be where the sidewalk will go. But when the time you add the bike lanes, you add the planter strip and the rest of it, that will go into the parking stalls, which, and the other half of this is that, to be honest with you, it's not really a sidewalk. If you're gonna drop the entire segment down, you're not protecting the pedestrians at all. You just painted the asphalt a different color.
So where are they gonna park?
For this, we would recommend using the 109th Street. When we go before with the public outreach, our intention now is to go to each property owner and discuss impacts for driveways or for mailboxes or anything else. And we fully expect some pushback here and there because while we will say, yeah, you can park on 111th Street, or excuse me, 109th Street, there are impacts for him to do so. He's currently got some garbage cans and other things back through there. Some of his tenants, I'm assuming, are using it for guest parking and such. We do expect there to be some pushback, but we're gonna try to mitigate that as best we can, but
So they do have other property they can access and create into parking, that's what you're saying?
correct, it's right of way. It's city the right of way on 109th, I keep saying 111th, 109th is very wide.
Okay.
So it's a gravelled, that's kind of grown in weeds area through there.
Have you spoken to the owner about it at some length?
No, it's our intention in the next couple of weeks we want to brief you guys on this before which is the reason, one of the main reasons why we're here tonight.
Okay. And then I want to follow up with the red circles or whatever that are sound transit, especially the trail that'll go from 115th to the station. Is it your intent, is it your understanding that they're gonna do this at the same time? Or you're not gonna do it under the same contract, it sounds like, so that's why it's separate, but are they gonna do this trail or
So,
how's this all, is it gonna come together, is what I'm saying?
yeah, it will come together. 115th Street could be a little delayed from what we showed there because like Clover Creek Drive Sound Transit, is planning on going out with just one contract for their entire portion of this program, which includes improvements at the station for their PA, as well as for some audiovisual stuff and wayfinding throughout the city. They've got a laundry list of stuff that they want to do as part of this. That portion in red, along with the Clover Creek Drive portion, is a part of this. We are coordinating with them on the design aspect of it, but they will not be built at the same time and certainly not under the same contractor. As the contractor the city is going to hire is not going to get into the railway. When you get into the railway, that is a very specific, there are a lot of requirements you have to have that we'd rather the contractors we hire not follow, if you will.
They have enough right away then.
Yes, yes, Sound Transit has enough right away through there.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm with Councilmember Branstetter on this. Major Councilmember Laura Sella.
Thank you. Just one last, before you dismiss our lovely transportation engineers, since we have you here, can we get a quick update on the Tillicum to Gravely connector and Nyanza Road as well? Are they on track to finish on time?
Let me start with what I know best, which is the Nyanza, and try to fill you in as best I can with the Tillicum, although the next guest, Mr. Ott, would probably be a little bit better on the Tillicum Gravely. For Nyanza, they have one or two more concrete pours, and and the asphalt, provided the weather holds tomorrow, early tomorrow, they're gonna pave the base lift on the final portion of the asphalt at the roundabout and get that ready to be opened up here very shortly. Looks like the weather is not going to be great for the top lift of asphalt for a week or two. As soon as the top lift of asphalt is ready, they'll pave the top lift, get the castings adjusted and be out of there until they can get striping done in 3 weeks after they pave the top lift. And then ultimately a couple more months down the line, the lighting will come in. So Nyanza, within the next 2 or 3 weeks, should look completely different. It should be reopened here very, very shortly. The roundabout, as soon as Wednesday, the temp signal will come down, provided weather holds for us tomorrow. That's the last that I've heard. Gravely Thorn Connector, they're actively moving forward with they did the temp signal last week. We've had a little bit of a blip as far as our video detection down there. They're getting that up and running. So if you do hear or experience complaints from people sitting at a light with nobody there, it's because the video detection is currently not working. So they are actively trying to get that resolved. I'm not 100% certain. They appear to be on schedule, though I don't know when that's fully going to be up and running for the Gravely Thorn Connector. Might be a better question for Mr. Ott.
Great. We'll take that opportunity. Thank you very much, guys. These are great projects and you know, as Councilmember Branstetter stated, in an area that really could use a lot of pedestrian amenities. And so we're really looking forward to this. I think the city of Lakewood will be a much better place when these are completed. Thank you. Mr. Ott. Overview of the Americans with Disabilities Act Transition Plan. And then we'll ask you about your knowledge of we'll ask. Thank you, Mr. Ott. Go ahead.
Oh, looks like we're having some mic issues this evening. Good evening, Mayor Boakey, Deputy Mayor Bell, and members of the council. Maybe I'll start with the last question first.
Okay.
I don't have a current schedule with me this evening. However, they are under deadline to meet some time requirements with the Golf and Country Club. And as Troy mentioned, they're working on that temp signal so they can install the soldier pile wall and eventually the new signal pole there at Gravely Pack Highway. But what I'll do is get an update from WashDOT on where they are on completion on that project.
Great, thank you.
So this evening, it's just a brief overview of the ADA transition plan and our process. We're at the beginnings. On the call tonight, we have Al King with King Technologies. I see Al on the, oh, there he is up there too. Al, can you wave if you can hear us? All right, so Al can hear us. So Al's available at any point through the presentation if you have a question, and then definitely at the end. So Al is putting together this plan with city staff. And I'll go ahead and get going on this presentation. It starts on page 32 of your packet. And again, this is just a brief overview. And where do I point this, Brianna? Over here. So which way to go? Perfect. Thank you, Brianna. So these are the items we're going to go over this evening. It's the who, what, where, when, why of ADA transition plans. And we'll go over each one of these items in the following slides. So the WIA plan, July 26, 1990, George H.W. Bush signed the ADA into law. Title II of that clearly says any local agency, so we fall into that. Discrimination is considered if a facility is not, someone with a disability is not able to transit that facility. And one thing I should have said at the beginning is we're focusing this plan that I'm discussing tonight on work in the right of way or facilities in the right of way. And then we definitely fall into the requirements because we have 50 or more employees at the City of Lakewood. All right, so what's in a plan? A big portion of that to begin with is self-assessment. During COVID in 21, 22, the city did an assessment of all our pedestrian ramps, sidewalks, and traffic signal push buttons. So we did that self-assessment. But as you're well aware, substantial capital work has been done since that time. So we are currently starting an update to that. Some of it's very straightforward because whole corridors have been replaced, like Washington, Veterans, portions of Stillicum, et cetera. What's required in the plan and an item to discuss is that method of barrier removal. Here I have a slide with a photo in the bottom right that shows South Tacoma Way and 92nd. If you take a look at the Google Earth photo, the old photo, there's no truncated domes. If the plan was in place, that would have been noted as barriers to be addressed. The previous slide showed a ramp with no truncated dome. So someone sight impaired would have a challenge with that. But we had a capital project funded by TIB to put that signal in at 92nd and South Tacoma Way that was recently completed. But that's just an example of barrier removal. It can be something as simple as installing truncated domes or more invasive of, complete tear out ped ramps, push buttons, et cetera. It can get much more expensive very quickly. So part of that plan will be looking at a schedule for removing these barriers and then a budget. And so Public Works will come forward with a budget request to modify the minor capital budget in the future to include appropriate amount to address ADA barriers in the right of way. So that'll be forthcoming. Public engagement, that's going to be a three-pronged process, and it's going to start here very shortly. We're going to take the plan through Planning Commission, so that'll include a hearing. There'll be 3 touches at Planning Commission. The first touch will be March 18th. Immediately following that, the draft plan will be sent out to what I'd call as interested stakeholders, Pierce Transit, Clover Park School District, West Pierce Fire, and many others. I think Center Force. Anyways, I won't try to list them all from memory, but that will start, as well as we've already, and I'll have it further in the slides, we've already put a notice in the bulletin, but we'll go out and just solicit general comment, as well as we have a web page available. And then we'll keep track of all our engagement for a 3-year period at a minimum, which is a requirement of the ADA. So other requirements is a ADA coordinator, and some of these things city already has in place, and we've always followed ADA and ProEG, et cetera. But our coordinator is our HR manager. And she's not only responsible for in the right away as far as receiving any ADA grievance, but citywide. We have notices about ADA broadly throughout the city website. We have the grievance procedures on our webpage, as well as the appeals process. And the last one that council just touched this on March 2nd was the adoption of the new Title 12 Engineering Standards Manual and Standard Plans. So Al King had gone through all those documents, as well as the webpage and other documents the city has, and noted areas that needed to be addressed, and those were addressed in the recently adopted update to the engineering standards and the engineering standards manual both. So that activity has been done. Those go in effect 60 days after March 2nd. So we're definitely in a good position when it comes to where we're at with that. There we go. Here's the next one. So where are we at in the process? So I got a little ahead of myself. We've done the code review, the website review, the ADA notice update, and the coordinator position updated, that was just updating it from Mary McDougall to Nicole Camus, as Mary had retired. The plan has been drafted, and that draft plan will go forward on March 18th. We had that announcement back in January. Another announcement will go out in March. And as well as I'd already mentioned, the webpage has been started. If you go to the webpage, you'll notice a couple dates slid a little. And so I'll be working with Kelly to get that updated. So looking at a little more detailed schedule, I noticed the red on the very top item is hard to see on the overhead. But that's where we find ourselves today, and just an introduction to the council at study session on the ADA plan. Where we go from here is, as already mentioned, March 18th, we'll be at Planning Commission. The very next day, we'll start sending out the draft plan to all the interested stakeholders. Be working with our communications manager on the bulletin. April 1st is the planned date for the Planning Commission hearing. 15th would be the adoption of the plan, and then we would come back on the 11th of May to council, and then adoption is tentatively scheduled for June 1st. Following that, the plan would be put onto the website. So just in summary, I've already gone over this, but our next steps are really the stakeholder engagement and refinement of that plan, and just working the process so that we can have that adopted in June and be compliant. So at this point, Al King, as well as myself, are available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Ott. Are there any questions for Mr. Ott or Mr. King? Mr. Pearson?
Break it.
Boom.
Thank you, Mr. Ott. I just had a question about how we do this planning and we did all this work to identify potentially which intersections or which ADA ramps are, out of standards and stuff. And how does this plan guide some of our work? Or is there anything outside of our standard transportation projects that are planned that we're doing? Or is it just we're identifying areas or particular intersections, and then as we come through with projects, we improve those? Or is it something else that we're doing outside of these larger projects, I guess?
So it's the latter. We'll have our capital program, and then this would be identify areas that need addressed outside of the capital program, that some funding would be necessary to work to remove these barriers. Could it be something that comes up in the capital program? That an example is that 92nd and South Tacoma Way. Had a plan been in place of that prior to that project, it would identify that intersection as needing upgrades. Public Works pursued TIB funds to remove, or it wasn't so much just to remove those barriers, but also increase access there at 92nd and South Tacoma Way, because it's such a long distance between crossings, excuse me. So there may be opportunities where grant funds can help cover, those types of projects. But I anticipate a request of some funding to work to remove ADA barriers. One thing I skipped over, I should have mentioned, is the city has a lot to be proud of. We've only been incorporated since '96. We have done South Tacoma Way from Gravelly to City of Tacoma at 90th. We're just finishing that up right now. Bridgeport, a good portion is still to come. I mean, I could start naming roads on. You talked about many of them this evening. One thing to recognize, if you look at 2024, 2025, and this year, just those 3 years, by the end of this year, the city will have replaced 15% of our traffic signals. That's 10 signals that have been built and replaced. So it's something to be proud of. So the good news with all that new infrastructure, we know it's compliant. So that kind of helps us tighten up, what to look at. And maybe some of those areas are things like or we need to put audible push buttons in, or ped ramps that don't have truncated domes. Those are just two examples. So I hope I answered your question.
I'll go with Brett, Councilmember Larson.
Thank you, Mayor Boki, and thank you, Mr. Ott. So this is an assessment specifically for transportation, right? It's not city facilities and that sort of thing. That'd be a separate ADA requirement.
Right. Just within the right of way.
All right, thank you. Yeah. Anything else?
No, I was gonna say, we have Al King. So Al, if there's something you want to add, just break in, please.
I would, to clarify a little bit, city's done an excellent job of taking care of the ramps and push buttons. But the DOJ, who oversees the ADA program, expects agencies to go beyond their normal construction program. City has been meeting all of the requirements in their normal construction program, but the DOJ really wants to see some progress beyond that. Their ideal is you'd have it all fixed this year, which of course in almost every city in the country is not feasible financially. But that's kind of the intent. The only other thing I would comment on is the plan includes a fairly comprehensive prioritization system based on the condition of the ramps and push buttons across the city. And when you program any additional ramps, as an example, it would show the priority based on the condition and usefulness of those ramps.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned something about audible and audio portions. So I know at certain intersections where there's crosswalks, pedestrians hit a button that says, hey, you're now clear to go across South Tacoma Way or Silicon Boulevard. How do we assess which intersections get those and which ones don't? And is the plan to have all of them have that?
Yeah, the plan is to have all of them audible, and that can be a real issue to someone that's sight impaired. One that we had updated was 93rd and Bridgeport. And there was someone that was sight impaired that used that intersection because it's a T. They don't feel the normal push of cross traffic, and so it was a challenge for them to cross that intersection. So we upgraded that one. I want to say it was about 4 years ago when the request came in. So we've been doing a lot of the things. Requests come in, we evaluate them, we address them through minor capital or other budget means. But this is the formal plan that will, as Al mentioned, prioritize what we would recommend to do next.
Great, thank you. I know I got feedback from a resident near Lockburn that was requesting that on one of those intersections, and it was installed, and he got back to me and said thank you. So thanks, props out to your folks. Are there requirements for trails as part of this? For example, the Chambers Creek Canyon. Do we manage that as a city, or is that all Pierce County?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to defer to Pierce County Parks on that because that's a little bit different. I'm not probably the best person to speak to what's required on a trail for ADA. I would just think at a minimum, you would want ADA parking available, but yeah, that would be a question I could maybe help ask Pierce County for further clarification if you'd like.
Yeah, I'd be interested in finding out because that may be applicable to some of our street ends if we don't fully develop them and just have them as trails down to lakes. I imagine the same requirements would exist there. And then my last question is, are there additional requirements for bus stops and transit centers in terms of accessibility for folks and ramps?
Al, do you want to help me on that one? Additional requirements for accessibility at bus stops. I know many of the bus stops on our principal arterials have sidewalks, and many of them have currently have ADA compliant crossings. Do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, and quickly on the trails issue, whether it's a trail, a sidewalk, bus stop, all are required to meet ADA requirements. This plan does not specifically address the sidewalks or the bus stops. It's only the ped ramps and the push buttons. However, as upgrades occur, then it behooves the city to upgrade wherever those other facilities tie in. Now, having said that, for example, if there is no trail or crosswalk or extension, then the city is not required to put in something that is functionally not useful at that point.
Thank you very much. Any more? Okay, Councilmember Talbot and then Councilmember Brandstetter, and then we're going to probably have to wrap this up. This is just an informational discussion tonight. We thank Mr. Ott and Mr. King. So
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ott. So when it comes to installation of new facilities, especially like ramps at unsignalized intersections, do we have or will we amend our current maintenance policies so that we can incorporate things like upgrading ramps or even installing the APS push buttons when we do signal upgrades or at signalized intersections, and then ramps at unsignalized intersections? But overall, just how do our current maintenance policies address upgrades in that process?
Yeah, historically, that's process has been through Public Works. Previously, we were called Public Works Engineering. Our maintenance group is pretty modest. So we have historically looked at locations more from a capital project standpoint than from an individual intersection that needs an upgrade standpoint. The exceptions would be when we get these requests to add audible push buttons or any request when it comes in, we've always evaluated, this is something that should be done within the right of way if the infrastructure isn't ADA compliant. But historically, we've been very capital focused.
Thank you. Yeah, I know that the APS push buttons can become, in some cases, require whole new traffic cabinets. So being cognizant of where we can maximize upgrades in our current maintenance practices would be good. And the last question I have is regarding costing. Will the draft of this plan include the cost associated with the wholesale infrastructure needs that will be prioritized and presented in this plan?
Yeah, it will at kind of a higher level. The way I envision this would be looking at the plan and the priority, working with the 6-year tip and then the budget every 2 years to vet out what is available. As Al had mentioned earlier, it'd be nice just to, clear it all in 1 year, but I think what you're alluding to is it'd be very costly. So at a high level, there'll be an estimate in the plan. And then as we go forward, this plan should also be looked at somewhat as a living document every 3 to 5 years, be updated, and we can continue to refine our cost estimates like we do with the 6-year tip. Al, you're on the call here. Is there anything you want to add to that question?
No, I think that generally covers it. As a practical matter, you're simply not going to be able to upgrade everything that needs upgrade. Now, having said that, the priority system would give you a list and you could project the costs. It will be very, very significant to look at the whole system, because once you start, you look at sidewalks and your trails and everything else. I wouldn't, as a general rule, suggest you need to do that. I think your capital planning and the priorities, looking at can we do a bit more to move this whole project ahead, is the most practical way to view it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Weston, I understand we're developing a specific plan with this focus because there's a requirement to do that. But I would say that if I look back 15 years, I've seen that the city's planners have had a mindset to look at the ADA elements of numerous transportation projects, and they've even had some projects. And so I think that on 108th Street, we had a project one time where all we did is go down the whole street to every intersection and upgrade the ADA ramps to be able to go and do that. So I think that having a plan meets a requirement, that it will help us keep the focus that I think we've already had, that I've seen to do that. That being said, in the process that you've laid out for us for the development of the plan and the public engagement efforts that go into getting an initial plan approved, I'm a little bit concerned about two things. One is the indicated that we're going to make some outreach to stakeholders, and you described examples of stakeholders that we've identified, and you mentioned Pierce Transit and Sound Transit, and I think the school district. But I didn't hear any stakeholders that are from the disability advocates community, like the Center for Independence, which is located here in Lakewood, or the Tacoma Area Coalition of Individuals with Disabilities, and some other similar groups that are in the business of advocating for individuals with disabilities that have a perspective of what makes a safe intersection to do that and to be able to look at it. So I would ask that you make sure that the stakeholders who are going to be specifically invited to comment by email, according to what you're doing, includes folks from that grouping of organizations that are there. The other thing is that I think that making the draft of the plan available on the 20th of March, the 19th of March, where the only public hearing to comment on the plan is on April 1st. Okay, April 1st is a bad day to ask for public comments on anything, but essentially it's 10 days that you're going to put something out that people can find it. That's an extremely short notice to the broader public that you didn't come to mind as stakeholders to do that. And then there is not another public hearing before the council about it after the planning commission works its way through. They take 2 weeks to do that and go forward. That seems a very abbreviated way to get significant public engagement to be able to go and do that. And if a more robust public engagement can be done by extending the whole timeline out to getting this plan approved by the 1st of July as opposed to the 1st of June, and there's some options to do that, because I'm not seeing a lot of time to take what you learn from the public engagement, even at the Planning Commission's hearing, and get it integrated into what is already a fairly mature draft to be able to go and do that. So I wouldn't want you to feel rigidly confined if some things come up from the public engagement things that require another look to do that. And the last comment I would say is regarding ongoing, that there may be, as we review the tip every year in the 6-year tip to do that, and there's quite a few tables in that, but adding a table for the ADA transition with a series of projects with some years and with the best available cost estimates might be a way to systematize making sure that it gets looked at every year, not by the Planning Commission and by the council.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Brandstetter. Thank you very much and good luck on all this. It doesn't matter.
Don't take it personally.
Just don't, yeah. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. King.
Did we let him off the hook on the trail?
Yeah, he talked to it first thing. He's gonna get us information on that. He's gotta get that from WashDOT. Ms. Silva, you're welcome to scream from the rooftops or something.
I think you have to get the microphone. Here you go. Check 1, 2.
So this is a review of Natural Environment and Climate Change Advisory Board, beginning on page 41 of our packet.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council members. This is not a new topic before this body. So we are seeking specifically guidance on implementation of next steps. So as the mayor mentioned, starting on your packet page, PDF page 41, this is intended to follow up from our February 17th City Council discussion, as the department was asked to provide more greater specificity on work plan items for what could be considered a Natural Environment and Climate Change Advisory Board, or NECCAB for short. What's included in your packet through attachments A and B are draft work plans, guidance and governance and scope based on current Lakewood Municipal Code when it comes to formal advisory groups and the adoption of annual work plans. In addition to what that looks like specifically in attachment B, in a tabular format, what a sample annual work plan would look like by that group, guided by specific statutory requirements related to House Bill 1181 and amendments to the comprehensive plan. Also included in your packet, this might be familiar, a draft ordinance, which included creation of this new advisory board. And just in case if it gets brought up for discussion this evening, another not new document before you, but at our previous conversation, looking at the Planning Commission as an option. So as a friendly reminder to the council here, current discussions are kind of zeroing in on potentially formalizing this as a formal advisory group with the Lakewood Municipal Code. We hope to receive guidance if that's the approach this body would like to take, or another option. Again, the primary delivery and deliverables of this group and focus of this group is House Bill 1181, which amends several different elements of the comprehensive plan, but has implementing regulations or other plans to help facilitate that. Much of it is very specific or technical, but also has policy related to it. So some of those items include, but not limited to, establishing a climate change element in the comp plan, reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. In addition to that, addressing climate resiliency and adaptation, policy provisions to reduce vehicle miles traveled and establish multimodal level of service, whether you're in the downtown or citywide. Consider environmental justice and equitable outcomes as part of this effort, as well as implement climate response through land use, transportation, and infrastructure planning. All of this must be completed by the city by June of 2029, so a phased approach in rolling out these technical and very specific deliverables is needed. In addition, this advisory board would look at an urban forestry management plan, which is guided in our current comprehensive plan, a climate vulnerability assessment, which addresses many of those previous statutory requirements and all-encompassing and integration, as well as an urban heat resiliency strategy and native climate resilient planting plan. What you'll see specifically in attachment A and more of a Word document is what that council directed work plan would look like, the establishment of that work plan, the process to amend that work plan, as well as assign new tasks, which under current city code remains with city council. Not anyone can amend the work plan without approval of city council. In addition to that, it clarifies the role of this advisory group as advisory only. They do not adopt policy, amend budgets, etc. They provide recommendations to specifically the Planning Commission if we're amending a comprehensive plan amendment to address climate change, or as well as City Council. In addition, they do not establish administrative policy or enforce or interpret our local codes. Another element of the work plan, and specifically in attachment A, establishes that operational boundary. What subjects, again, specific deliverables associated with HB 1181 discussed previously, the timelines, who would lead that discussion for the city, as well as required technical support. This is all intended to focus on HB 1181 compliance, the time restrictions to do that in a phased manner by June 2029, as well as how that is coordinated through a comprehensive plan update on an annual basis. The staff support structure would be housed within the Planning and Public Works Department, who would assist with agenda preparation aligned with the council adopted work plan, support the technical analysis, legal and regulatory context, the coordination with the Planning Commission, which is a separate advisory body established by state but our own code, and how that would be transmitted of recommendations to city council. In a tabular format, attachment B goes into what those specific deliverables and mandates are in statute. I will not go over great detail of what that table, but it's intended to describe the scope of work, the legal requirement, timeline to do so, but also the lead department support and status tracking for that. I'm going to just stop there. That was a lot of paper, work plans, statutory requirements, or I'll continue with the other attachments.
Thank you, Ms. Silva. This is the third time we've discussed this now. Staff has, I think, done a good job of presenting both options to us. So if anybody has any questions for Ms. Silva, and then we're going to have a discussion to kind of give the staff the direction that we would like them to go. So are there any questions for Ms. Silva on this subject? Okay. So you might want to stick around, Ms. Silva, so that we, just in case. So who'd like to start off the discussion about which direction we'd go? We discussed this a couple of weeks ago. Mr. Branstetter was here. Councilmember Lindholm was not. So if anybody, Councilmember Branstetter, do you want to go first? Watch it.
Well, we're not discussing a council chambers technology advisory committee, so we'll go forward with this. In our last discussion, part of our discussion really had to do with what would this advisory board do, and as opposed to what would be better done by the planning commission. And in thinking about this, I have a very different view of what the advisory committee do and what the planning commission's role is. There seems to be a focus on trying to meet the requirements of House Bill 1181. And House Bill 1181 is not that different than all sorts of bills that have come to us from Olympia that have mandatory things that we have to do on a timeline that involve the comprehensive plan and code to be able to go and do that to meet requirements that are set for us. And I think that we really do need to say, not add an extra step in front of the planning commission to deal with getting our obligations under House Bill 1181 done. That being said, I think that there is a need for us to have a natural environment climate change advisory committee of citizens that operates not in the realm of trying to figure out how to do mandatory things, but actually operates much more like the Arts Commission, where we have an idea of what we really want, the enhancements to how we're addressing the national environment that we're implementing from the ground up because they're good for us, not because someone has created us and said that we have to do one, but because it will make the quality of life better in the community. And that it is the idea of a place that will synthesize ideas that we as a council and staff can evaluate as to how implementable they are, but that address the area of natural environment, climate change, which is an area that is important to the citizenry and the residents of the city, as is shown by numerous surveys that we've done about what do they value about here. But that it's not to do that. So I'm sort of in favor of establishing a climate change and natural environment advisory committee that is able to make recommendations and investigate options for recommendations more broadly and bring them to us, while at the same time, the mandatory code type things that come to us that we have to implement are put in the already established processes of the Planning Commission to be able to go and do that. So I'm sort of saying it isn't do one or do the other, but I think we should do both, defining one role as a think tank, the other the other is, yeah, we got to get this done and we got a timeline and there's rules.
Would like to go next. Oh, it works.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I kind of said my 2 cents the last time we were all here about really thinking it should go through the Planning Commission, and I still am on that same track, and for a few reasons. I think that there's so much integration with what this would be as it relates to urban planning and the things that go along with that in the Planning Commission. But when I was on the Planning Commission, we had many things come through that were like the tree, like the tree plan, and that went through an ad hoc committee, and that documented that part of the record, and then it went through the Planning Commission. And I think that once it gets to council, you really have a really good picture of all of the steps, and it's not just coming through one committee, it's kind of rolling through 2, and you can see, you know, the concerns that were raised at each. So I think that it's getting a more balanced, like when it comes to us at the council, I think you get a more balanced, complete record of things if you have it go through Planning Commission and Planning Commission on some of these tasks, you know, forms an ad hoc committee that, hey, we want to, you know, have these folks go focus on this, and then goes through Planning Commission, and then it does. So that's still my recommendation. And but I think that, you know, Mr. Brandstetter he's you know, kind of on the right track there with it's nice to be able to have the ad hoc committees to help out the Planning Commission and as needed kind of a thing. I also, you know, we ask a lot of city staff, and I'm a little sensitive to creating more meetings for them to manage and do. So that's not really, you know, as important, but I think that does go into the equation a bit. So thanks.
Any other comments? Councilmember Lauricella.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Coming into this discussion, I was heavily leaning towards we should really create this new advisory board to really drive any sort of sustainable climate action and resiliency work and that sort of thing. But after hearing Councilmember Brandstetter, I can appreciate the need to expedite resolutions for things like House Bill 1181, but not lose the momentum that we want to make sure we're keeping track of sustainable climate action and resiliency and those things. So I'm leaning more towards the Planning Commission could manage this specific to this House bill, but I think we need to assess how we address the other piece of it. And I think we do need to have an advisory board for that. Thank you.
Councilmember Lindholm.
I had the pleasure of listening to the many great comments from our last meeting where this was talked about by my colleagues. And I'm glad we're talking about this. The environment's incredibly important to me. It's incredibly important to Lakewood. The impetus for this is that we're doing this because of House Bill 1181, but also I think Lakewood and its leaders want to be really mindful of climate change and making sure that our comprehensive plan reflects that. Climate change is one piece of a larger comprehensive plan. The Planning Commission has a statutory role to review the entire comprehensive plan and make sure that it coheres, make sure that it all goes together, that those pieces fit. And there is additional, as Councilmember Pearson mentioned, there's additional cost and burden to staff. So the question is, how do we be good stewards of staff time and of resident money, but also make sure that this voice is heard. So it makes sense to me that the balance there, at least to start with, is to have the ad hoc committee that can make recommendations to the planning commission. We as a body are not bound by planning commission recommendations. If they receive something from this ad hoc committee that we don't like, that we don't agree with, that doesn't prevent us from accessing those recommendations that came in from the NECC. So there seems to be a nice balance here available to us. And if that doesn't work, if we feel like we're not getting the council advice, thoughts that the voice isn't being heard of climate change, that we need to really, I think, represent the city well, we can make a change. But it is a significant step to establish an advisory board. So I would be more in favor of an ad hoc committee.
No, go ahead. Yeah, Councilmember Bell, are you done? Okay. So, oh, Councilmember Talbot.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate all these comments. I think for reasons that Mr. Branster explained well, I do think that I still believe that there is benefit in a separate advisory committee, because I think that the additional committee lends itself, I think, more transparently to allowing additional voices that come from a different perspective of the built environment. Because the Planning Commission, it is true, like Councilmember Pearson, you've mentioned that a lot of these topics in this plan are related to land use decisions, but they are related to land use decisions in response because of the impacts of the built environment. And so that's where you get, I think, the perspective from those individuals on the Planning Commission. Allowing a separate advisory board creates a foundation to talk about other things beyond the built environment, and in response to proactive thinking about natural resources and the natural environment, future forward for not just this plan, but also in our local mix of issues that we grapple with. So for these reasons, I am in favor of of a separate advisory board. I am also I'm also in favor too, though, and I accept that if we are going to task our planning commission to create an ad hoc committee, I would ask, I do think it's healthy to recruit and put out a call for additional members that are not on the planning commission to join, to have an opportunity to be part of this advisory board, because I do think that there are some organizations out there that are very intimately familiar with the natural environment here in Lakewood, the conditions that our habitat and our ecosystems. And those are the voices that are very well suited, in fact, best suited to be on the task force. So if that's the direction we're going to go, my only ask and request would be that we allow additional members outside of the Planning Commission to be on that task force. Thank you.
I think I'm working. Got it. Thank you, Mayor. I really like that a lot. I think the way I'm looking at it is that I brought this up last time, is that I get really concerned that we're not going to have the subject matter experts available for us. We think we put it out there, we say, okay, it would be great. We could have this subcommittee, we could keep it going. We need to have people that are qualified to be on that. And I'm concerned with that already, because I know that we have challenges getting people on our boards and commissions as is. So I would like to make sure that I love the idea of it going through the Planning Commission, because I think you're correct, Councilmember Pearson, about the fact that there's a lot of integrations through there that I think could get missed if we had another side committee. So I think it's a really good place for some checks and balances. So I do appreciate that. I love the idea of adding maybe a couple other people that could have a special voice as part of an ad hoc, part of the planning commission to review those things. Maybe they are the subject matter experts on that. And I also don't want to lose the momentum on this and get stuck behind things. And we don't want to lose funding. We don't want to lose, there's a lot of things that we don't want to get behind if we start another committee. And I also do think of staff, like you mentioned. So we have to have another staff member to do the meetings. We have to have another, like, do we have those resources here? So there's multiple things that I think of. I think we could get where we needed to be if it went through the planning commission and maybe we possibly added a couple extra. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bell. Great comments. And so I would note that the last time we did an ad hoc committee was for the tree, to look at the tree ordinance. And it actually worked very well. And if you're concerned that the climate side will be buried, I would tell you that that ad hoc group on the tree ordinance came forward with a very tough tree ordinance. In fact, it was described by the then city manager that if we had passed it like that, it would be the toughest tree ordinance in the state. Don't know if that's true or not, but so there was modifications along the way, both at the planning commission and at the council. So my concerns remain. I still have the same concerns about staff time. Once you put together statutorily a committee, we have gotten rid of some committees, just kind of, some have outlived their usefulness, others just outlived, we couldn't get members on them and that kind of thing. So it's best to see, we can always add a committee. It's very difficult to contract one. So I think it's best to start with this, a plan similar to the one with the ad hoc plan where we actually went out and took, I think this time we would need to be more specific in what skills we're looking for. Last time it was much broader. We tried to get them from different areas of the city and various things like that. So we'll have to have those discussions or come back with some kind of areas of expertise. And so then are we willing to go outside the city for those levels of expertise in an ad hoc committee rather than a standing committee, which becomes much more difficult because I'm not really always comfortable with standing committees that have folks from the outside really making decisions for Lakewood. With an ad hoc committee, you have that flexibility of bringing in more folks like that. Will depend on staff really to tell us kind of what areas of expertise we would be looking for. It's going to hold this up a little bit, I think, but I think that this attachment, is it D, is really the one we're looking for with some kind of modification to make sure that they have, and then if we create this ad hoc committee, we should probably go through similar process of what we did for the tree ordinance. Because I think overall, I know we still have some people complaining about the tree thing, but I think overall that process worked pretty well.
I think I'm hearing kind of a majority perspective to pursue the planning commission with the desire of an ad hoc task force, whatever we call it within that framework. I'm also hearing that environmental voice, that policy, but also that subject matter expert. So what we need to bring forward to this body is not only amending attachment D, which amends the work plan for the planning commission, but also provides some specificity, you know what I'm trying to say, specifics related to what that task force, that ad hoc could look like. What I don't know off the top of my head, and we'll review it internally, is the rules of procedure for the planning commission, the limitation of how many people that would look like. We want to make sure we're in the bounds of what this group is looking at, but specifically that work plan item. So next steps, if I'm hearing correctly, we'll bring that forward to this body.
Yeah, I'm thinking that ad hoc wouldn't have, I don't know how many members of the planning commission, if any. right? I'm.
We have 7. I would probably, again, keeping it manageable, so we have to be very tactful in that approach. Subject matter experts, environmental, residential, that's a broad swath of different voices we want to hear from. But how is that also a part of the public engagement through formal public comment periods at the Planning Commission, but also the council, but also public hearings?
Yeah, and once we get that rolling, I mean, we do have opportunities to talk to citizens about it. I mean, coffee with the mayors quarterly, and that we're getting those started next month, I think. And so once we get this nailed down as to what kind of we're looking for, we can start that process to say this is because there could be people that object to this whole idea. So we need to be, I mean, we have to do it, but I mean, there could be folks that have concerns about where this could go. So Councilmember Branstetter.
Mr. Mayor, I'm certainly supportive of that in the realm of getting on with the business of complying with a Health Bill 1181 of essentially dealing with that through the Planning Commission work plan and including in their work plan for them to develop an ad hoc committee that could perhaps have members external to the Planning Commission if that's what they feel, to do that when focused on 1181. I am not really clear, though, where we're establishing an incubator of ideas long-term regarding the natural environment and climate change mitigation long-term for the community. I think at some point we have to come up with the way to do that. And the way to do that is not public comment at council meetings. Okay. In other words, so whether it's apart from 1181, there is some process that maybe we still need to look at to do that allows people to come in rather than having a process that's defined by a document that says you can't talk about anything but this list that the council thinks important. It's the same sort of thing that we're dealing with the American Lake Management Committee, where we gave them a document that said, and you can deal with milfoil, and now there are other problems and they want us to address that. But I'm certain, but in terms of getting on with the 1181, and there's a myriad of things in 1181, going through a process that with the Planning Commission is, I am fine with that in the short term. Just don't want to lose the long-term ability to generate ideas, and that every idea maybe isn't one to send to the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Mr. Branstetter. Ms. Silva, I think we've got that.
Thank you very much. We've received our guidance.
Thank you very much. So it's now the Mr. Michael Vargas show, Assistant to the City Manager. So we have another meaty topic here, Public Safety Sales Tax Ordinance. Mr. Vargas, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members. I will be beginning on page 58 of your packet tonight. So we are looking at HB 2015, a public safety sales tax ordinance to fund public defense here in Lakewood. It's been a while since this item has been before the council, so I'll take some time to go over some background here. And this all really impinges on changed indigent defense standards. So back in March in 2024, the Bar Association changed its indigent defense standards from 400 misdemeanor cases per attorney down to 120 cases per attorney. That was originally set to begin in July of 2025. However, in June of 2025, the Washington State Supreme Court released its own interim order, which stated that this new 120 case limit would begin in January of 2026 and gave a 10-year implementation window that we must hit by January 2036. It further stated in the order that implementation may be accomplished through phases where at least each year, there must be an annual reduction of at least 10% to meet the new caseload standards. So if you do the math, we're going down from 400 cases per attorney to 120 cases. That's a difference of 280 cases. So we must lower the case limit for each attorney by at least 28 cases per year. And what that really shakes out to, which is included in the model, we can review later, is that our main public defense firm must hire essentially 1.0 FTE every year to reach that goal in 10 years. So looking at HB 2015 itself as a sales tax, in 2025, this legislature passed HB 2015. It created two pathways for cities to fund public safety, which includes public defense. Created a new grant program and a new local sales tax. And they both have the same requirements. To go over those characteristics, it's a broad use sales tax. It's 1/10 of 1%. Can be used for any criminal justice purposes. And it specifically includes a public defense line. You have local legislative authority such that the tax can be imposed by councilmatic action at least through June 30th, 2028. So after that date, it must be approved by a vote of the people. It is a permanent sales tax, so it won't sunset. Requirements are created by the Criminal Justice Training Commission. It is stackable such that taxes stack with other sales tax and jurisdictions and revenues are not shared with other jurisdictions. There is a caveat here is that the jurisdiction's voters must not have rejected any public safety sales tax within 12 months, which Lakewood has not. And then eligible uses, I pulled out a line from the RCW for public defense. We may use it to ensure staffing adequate public defenders to provide appropriate defense for individuals, which is what the recommendation is here before you tonight. So implementation details. At this point, the earliest date that the city can begin tax collection is July 1st, 2026. The city needs to submit a signed sales tax ordinance to DOR 75 days before the collection start date, AKA by April 17th, 2026. And you are currently scheduled to vote on this ordinance on April 6th. And CJTC needs to determine eligibility, which may take up to 45 days from the date of application submittal, which occurred on February 20th. And also happens to be on April 2026. So the analysis here, I provided a model which has been before the council several times now, but it's been updated with the new start date here on the next page. But essentially, that the city must add 1.0 FTE public defenders each year between now and 2036 to comply with their caseload limits. And Table A shows projected sales tax revenue completely funds our primary public defender contract costs in 2027, a little bit of a net positive there. However, starting in 2028, projected sales tax is less than the projected annual contract cost, with the difference growing to nearly $2.1 million by 2035, and that will be coming out of the general fund by then. So it is recommended that the city council implement the sales tax starting July 1st of this year to fund our main public defender contract. And while the tax revenue is projected to fall behind starting 2028, it will be much more of an impact to the general fund if this tax is not passed. And with that, happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Vargas? Councilmember Branstad.
Mr. Vargas, on the chart that you provided under the 2026 column, it says Q3 through Q4, and then it projects a $700,000 revenue, and then there is an annual contract cost with a negative number that subtracted the 700,000 from it to be able to go and do that. But the annual cost is not just for Q3 and Q4.
Correct.
So that what really is the annual? So is the annual cost half of that, like 600?
So the annual cost for the entire year, I guess I'm showing,
What's the Q3, Q4 cost of the contract?
you could essentially divide that by half. But I was trying to show that I'm trying to show the impact to the general fund in 2026 outright. Now, that is to say that the sales tax revenue, as you mentioned, does begin in Q3. And so I originally estimated a $1.4 million for a full year of sales tax revenue, which we see in 2027, cut that in half for 2026. But I did, yes, include the full year's worth of contract cost for public defense.
Good. But the current reality of our current biennial budget that includes 2026 is the full cost of Pacific Point Defense's annual contract is already budgeted with existing revenue.
Correct.
Okay. And what is this? And if we adopt this tax as a stopgap measure to deal with things, it's only an effective stopgap until 2028. In which case we need something beyond this sales tax to do that, even though your chart shows that the general fund money that we're currently spending towards this would end up being diverted to something else because we'd be using the sales tax money.
Correct. You could look at that quote unquote negative number in 2026 as freed up.
And we'd be looking at freeing up the $1,361,000 in 2027 being freed up as well by doing this tax, because the general fund wouldn't have to pay that. And that's fine. I mean, the chart doesn't make a case for establishing a perpetual tax. That's only going to be a stopgap that really gets us to where what we want to do for one or a year and a half. And I don't think that we've heard, at least I have not heard, in any specific ideas about if we don't do this for what would happen, and there's money to do that, about okay, well, if we have to pay these increases here, I don't know what the trade-off is about what we won't do. Okay, and I don't know what we can do to make this chart flatten a little bit by reducing some things that result in the changes to the need, or that the state legislature will do over the next 2 years or 4 years or 6 years to do that. I'll just say that I don't think that the case to start collecting this tax in July 1st of this year has been made to me in a way that I can make it to the community, and I wouldn't be voting for it.
Thank you for your work on this. One of the questions I have is obviously the caseloads are changing because we're trying to protect folks, give better representation to folks who can't afford to pay for it themselves. Sales tax is a very regressive form of taxation. It tends to burden those folks who are at the lowest end of the income bracket. Do we have any alternatives to raising money that's not regressive?
Alternatives provided by the state? No.
Not provided by state. Do we have alternatives as a city that aren't regressive?
You have limitations on what can be done to increase revenues at the municipal level. Some of the things that you have to your access would be increasing some of the transportation fee components. But I don't know, those are probably going to be specific transportation. One of the things I wanted to identify, if I can go back to Councilmember Brandstetter's questions related to what the impacts would be, you will be looking at a reduction in services. When we first brought this up, we identified different things that those funds that would be used that are currently going towards the indigent defense. And some of the things have been identified at the year end, including body worn cameras, which were purchased as a one-time component. Well, that contract is coming up and so that would still be used as public service components. But you will see even in 2027, well, and actually you'll be increasing an amendment for indigent defense here coming up for, I believe, 85,000 for cost to amend for this year's budget. But even going into 2027, you're looking at an additional close to $200,000 cost that we anticipate that is going to mean the reduction of other services. When I brought this up at the end of the year, you have some council priorities, including things that we signed off on that may be impacted, including some of the developments, especially related to Edgewater Park that we discussed as we were going into it. So the consequence is you are going to have some impact of services that council is going to have to determine a reduction in service levels.
So if I'm hearing correctly, we may have an option with transportation impact, but otherwise there's no non-regressive form.
But those will be restricted to transportation.
I just think it's a really important point because we don't want to burden folks at lower end of the spectrum when at the same time we're trying to represent them better. The other piece is, I wonder, what kernel are we planting? So in 2035, this shows over a $2 million deficit. Are we going to be having the same conversation about raising it again in years future? I mean, as you're building this chart, I'm sure it occurred to you, wait a minute, this isn't sustainable. Do you have any thoughts in that direction?
Yeah, as a local municipality on our own, it's not sustainable, right? And quite frankly, you know, the right to an attorney is in the Constitution, right? I mean, but it's unfunded. It's unfunded, right, if you will. Now the state has, you know, there has been a little bit of movement, if you will, but nothing has solidified this session, unfortunately, to fund public defense at a greater level, like other states, for example. I mean, if you look at what other states do, some of them take on this burden almost completely, right? I mean, here in Washington, we just don't. So without changes at, you know, the federal or state level in terms of funding, you know, this fundamental right that folks have, it's really on our own. And to the city manager's point, we're gonna have to look at the opportunity cost and trade-offs. But without this tax, the opportunity cost is just that much higher, right? So.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Councilmember Laura Silla.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Vargas. It's not an easy conversation to have, right? Anytime we're talking about burdening our residents, especially in perpetuity, it's not something to take lightly. So Pierce County just approved an increase that matches this, right? 1/10 of 1% for public safety. Do we get any of that funding? Is that applicable to spend on this topic?
No, per the RCW, it is not shareable revenue. Yep.
So looking at, I was trying to figure out, you know, how much does this impact each of our residents, right? And if we're talking $1.4 million to $1.5 million per year, it's about $22 per resident, which makes a difference to people. It's not something to be taken lightly. So I was going to ask the same question about what other options we have instead of increasing taxes. So reduction in services. Are there efficiencies we can drive into what we do to help also not just increase the revenue side, but let's decrease the cost in other places. So it's something to look at. You talked about 2 pathways that the state provided, a grant program as well as this. Have we pursued that grant program?
Not for HB 2015, no. And I believe that's for just hiring police officers.
It's not just for hiring police officers, it's for a myriad of things under the criminal justice system. But yeah, Mayor was right. You just said you have to pass the 1/10 of 1% first, and then you have to go for the funding.
Okay, so it's not two alternative pathways. You only get one if you take the other first. Great. Last question. So we keep hearing that crime rates are down across the city, right? So in theory, if crime rates are down, does that mean there are less cases to charge?
In theory, yes. However, there are indigent defense standards that state that we compensate based on case equivalencies as opposed to cases outright. For example, it's embedded within indigent defense standards to compensate for attorney of the day time on a calendar, which essentially means when an attorney is on a calendar, 1 hour equals 0.22 of a case in terms of compensation. So, and with, even if you were to do diversion programs and such, public defender is very likely going to be there whenever a client is on a calendar and they have a public defender, the public defender will be there. So, yep.
Any other comments? Councilmember Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I echo Mr. Brandsetter's comments wholeheartedly that when you look at this, you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And it's like, this gets us through a year, maybe two, and then we're back in the same situation and we burden the residents forever. And, it's just like this never ending cycle. And I'm especially sensitive in this current climate that we live in right now where things are so expensive, and it seems like, the utilities are passing taxes and we're, potentially looking at new taxes, and the state's looking at new taxes. And it's like, when is it gonna stop, right? When's the bleeding gonna stop? And so that's why I'm very sensitive to it. I think it's most people's jobs, they don't get, usually you would get money if someone quadrupled your work. And I mean, that's like so gracious of the state to do, right? Like, they quadruple our work here, give us no money, and then make us look like the bad people that are having to increase tax burdens on our residents to get out of the hole for a year or two. And so the alternatives are all bad, right? Like, okay, we can not do parks projects for the next decade plus. We can, cut 6, 8 cops, or I don't even know, 20 cops in 10 years, to get up to $10 million and whatever this is going to be. I mean, these are all just terrible options. So yeah, but I guess even with all the terrible options, this doesn't really get us over the finish line. There's no light at the end of the tunnel. So I too would not be supportive of this, just for the uncertainty that still remains after even passing it. So thank you.
Any other comments? Councilmember Talbot.
Thank you. I completely understand and agree with the frustrations expressed by my colleagues for this item. I think that this is particularly hard because I don't know, at least when it comes to, trying to provide for the basic level of service for next year and forward. I'm not sure that we have a choice to provide for those things without having the backfill. And so while I do agree that the table, I still have some, I don't think the table makes the case either, but at the same time, I don't know that we have much of a choice either to not, or at least we're pushing out our priorities. We're gonna have a retreat in a a month here, and then what would it all mean? Is it all moot because we have no way to, we're on a very long path to get to them. So I guess in that sense, I don't think that we have a choice, but, and so, and the other point I would make too is that when we did meet with our legislative delegates, we did tell them that we were supportive of this. So I will just leave that there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Talbot. Any other? Okay, so I'll speak to this. So these standards are just, you know, incredibly burdensome, but they're a reality. And the state legislature, you know, and I believe Wasak's correct. They're pushing a lawsuit that would call out the state, that the state is required to provide, constitutionally required to provide this service, as they had to do with, you know, K through 12 schools twice in my lifetime. They've had to go to the Supreme Court to get them to admit that they have to fund K through 12 schools. They didn't do it this year. It's an odd year. It's possible they could do something next year. The cities and counties were going to get some of the millionaire tax, and we were hoping in our discussions in Olympia that a portion of that, which would be fairly substantial, would go towards the indigent defense. And they took it out. It was actually in the bill, and they took it out. And then they went a step further, and they reduced the number of they reversed some of the sales taxes that they put on last year are coming off in 2029. So this number is already too high, right? And they took it off diapers, and they took it off toiletries, and they should have never had it on diapers. That's my personal opinion, but that's beside the point. So a lot of the things that we sell at Target and Walmart are suddenly now going to be tax-free. Great for people, but the state didn't give us, you know, it's going to impact, and I think you've seen that where they think it's going to be like $257 million a year statewide for city and county governments. So we went from getting money that would help us pay for this to getting less money in the future. I would note that these are ongoing expenses. So I disagree with comments made here tonight that, oh, we'll just stop a park project, or won't buy cameras, or we won't do that. It's not going to help you. It's from a different pool of money. If we're not going to do this to pay ongoing costs, we have to reduce ongoing costs in other areas, period. Trying to buy time by, oh, let's start burning furniture here is not effective governing. And it's if there's 4 of you that want to burn the furniture, go ahead. I'm not going to be one to do it. So those are very difficult choices, and we're going to be faced with them anyway. So we also have the issue, but I do want to say this about the timing of the vote. If we pass the tax and we don't get that approval from the state takes this whole thing, basically, because they're going to start taking $100,000 a month. So shouldn't we wait until we get the approval before we pass the tax? We lose, then we go into January of next year, I guess, because they don't do it in the 4th quarter, is my understanding. But if we don't, but I just don't feel like I can pass it when I don't know that we've got that approval yet. And and without going into all this, it's do we have the policies and procedures in place? Our police department, I guess, and it has to go, and that has to get approved. and then you can start collecting the tax. If you collect the tax, if you pass a tax, but you don't get that approval, until you get that approval, they start taking 100,000 a month, which is essentially everything that you've shown us here. Is that right?
So actually, we have up to 180 days after we hear back from CJTC to become in compliance before they start withholding tax. So we have half a year to get into compliance. And we'll actually hear back from them. We should on the same day that you're scheduled to vote on this, April 6th. Actually, before then, we're supposed to hear back, so. We can still pass it, and then we have 6 months if we're not in compliance to become in compliance before they start withholding.
You're hoping to hear before the 6th, but up until a couple of weeks ago, very few agencies had passed it. Correct?
Yeah, there's two. I believe it's Kent and Black Diamond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 2 agencies. Oy.
Yeah, according to their website, yep, CJTC, so. And a lot of cities have applied for it though, so that's probably gonna impact response time.
So what happens if we approve it? We haven't heard. Ideally, we would have heard. We don't qualify. We scramble around. Wouldn't it be better just to not pass it? Or can we turn around and reverse our decision until we? Because it doesn't make any sense to pass a tax that the money just goes to the state then. And in our case, it'll all go to the state. Is it 100,000 a month? Is that, am I right on that?
I saw that on their website, yep.
Okay. Sure, go ahead.
So in theory, if we don't pass this, it sounds like there's a deadline that we'd have to pass it by. If we wanted to come back and do this later for a different amount or for the same thing, would we have to go to a vote of the people and then we'd at least have some buy-in from our residents that this is a priority for them?
We could go to a vote. I'll be honest with you. I mean, let's face it. Here's my thing. It's 1/10 of 1%. You're getting nothing from it unless you have to show up in one of our courts. You need an attorney and you can't afford one. Who would vote for that? I mean, who in their right mind, right? I mean, it would just be like, oh yeah, I want to support people who are in trouble with the law but can't afford an attorney. And oh, by the way, it's a state responsibility anyway. So, I mean, yeah, you know, I'm not going out and selling it. I'm probably, right? That's not a good sales pitch. So, rock and a hard place. Uncomfortable rock and a hard place. Any ideas, Mr. Vargas? Your plan is, or the plan here is to get this to us April 6th?
Correct, yep.
Mayor, is it okay if I take the mic again? Because I want to call people's attention back to the chart. I think what the chart does a very good job of doing is identifying the danger of adding ongoing programs should this be implemented by council into the future, because that means we're going to have to use any potential savings in the general fund that are going to indigent defense right now to apply them into the future. So I think that's what the chart does a very good job of identifying is, should we even pass this, that doesn't give us a freedom to add ongoing expenses. And we should not add ongoing expenses because we are going to be at the end of this life cycle, pretty much using the entire amount of that general fund that is going towards it right now. But we'll have to start subsidizing the indigent defense with those general fund dollars as early as 2028. So that's just an indicator of where we're looking at into the future in respect to the rising costs of that Supreme Court decision.
Councilmember Branstetter.
I would just say, when the legislature established the ability to assess this public safety sales tax, they did not do it in response to telling cities and counties that here's your way to deal with the indigent defense issue, because the indigent defense issue hadn't happened yet. You know, it was designed to do a whole lot of other public safety things in an environment of where there were many cities and counties around the state that were in far worse shape of trying to fund their public safety needs than us. I am, again, not looking to just grab on this as a short-term stopgap to be able to go and do that. I am more in favor of being more aggressive in pressing the legislature in their next biennium that you need to aggressively adopt everything that is that is the increase, at least. Maybe they don't have to fund it the way that they have been, but that as every year it goes up, the legislature needs to take responsibility to be able to go into that. And I am not immune to saying when we have to make some reductions in services or something, or go to one of our other alternative revenue options of essentially pointing to this and saying that it is essentially an unfunded mandate. I'm not, this sales tax was not an effort to fund this issue around the state for everybody. It was something else, and it was really directed towards places that couldn't hire enough police officers and do other things. So I don't think the time is right for us to do that. I think the time is right for us to look at how can we perhaps reduce some of the caseload issues that might impact future contracts. That I think the time is right, because there are some revenue streams that we in Lakewood haven't chosen to take advantage of that that other cities have. And that's issue about, is there a segment of our business community that could be impacted by us in interpreting a business and occupations tasks on warehousing, which was something that we discussed at one time, to be able to go and do that. That we are significantly below the percentage threshold that is the maximum threshold the state allows on our gambling tax. Okay, so there are options that we can look at as we go through, and maybe we look at them from year to year. And we have to, if we reduce services, we have to be honest with the public about we reduce services because we couldn't pay for them, and instead we're paying for this, and that's what we have to do. And I'm not adverse to putting this in front of the voters, although I am as pessimistic as the mayor is that voters would thank us for doing that.
Okay, so we're clearly split. I would like the information on the B&O tax on warehousing. I would personally like to do B&O tax on adult family homes, but I don't know that we could do that separately.
Is warehousing the same square footage?
Yeah, I think well, we'd have to look at what Canton
I
offers.
was just asking, is warehouse B&O the same as square footage, looking at when you look at B&O? I was just.
I'd have to provide follow-up. I don't.
Okay, thank you.
And see how much that works and what that does. And try to get that to us. Like, we don't have a meeting in the last week of the month, so might just have to send, I don't know what we're gonna do. We might have to postpone that April 6th vote for a little bit. We'll see. would really like to get the certification prior. And if we get the certification, then we're gonna have to, you know, think about it. Because there'll be pushback on a BNO, right? I mean, that's something we've never had here in this city. So we might have some issues with that. But I think we should look at that because Kent and Auburn have it. They have more warehouse space though than we do, so.
Thank you. I think the only thing I would say is regarding Councilmember Branstadter's comments about looking at other revenue streams that we don't do that other cities do, even if we took those on, such as park impact fees or transportation impact fees, those and let's just throw in a B&O tax from the mix. I mean, hypothetically, each of those things would definitely encounter some level of pushback, not because we've never done them, but just because they would encounter a level of pushback. But also, even each of those in their own right would get you a very small sliver of the pie back into the general fund, and there would still be a gap to pay for this. So I know we know that, but I just want to caution that we're mindful of that too going forward.
Thank you, Councilmember Talbot. Any other comments? Okay, so you got your marching orders. We'll keep moving towards April 6th and we'll see what's going on. But you know, that the B&O thing is cracking a seal that's been a policy of this council for a long time, not to go there. So it'll be an interesting discussion. Thank you, Mr. Vargas. And you're up next. Do you want to take a break? Yeah. Good. Mr. Vargas, review a franchise agreement for Ziply Fiber Pacific LLC, and then right after that, you'll go to NFC Northwest LLC. Please summarize and tell us if there are any major differences between these two, or is there any reason we should not vote for these franchise agreements?
Not if you don't want more internet in the city. But to go over this quickly, the two are related in that they are essentially, I mean, they are the same exact franchise for two different companies. And I would like to call on a guest here to sort of explain how the two companies are related. I think that would be a better job than I could with the whereases here. So if Miss Jessica Epley is in the room there, she is a regulatory and external affairs VP for Ziply Fiber. And yeah, she can explain the sort of relationship between Ziply Fiber and NFC Northwest here, so.
Any questions?
Oh, Miss Epley is gonna explain. Yep.
My apologies. I had to rejoin as a panelist. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of the council. For the record, again, my name is Jessica Epley. I'm the Vice President of Regulatory and External Affairs of Ziply Fiber. I believe Mr. Vargas has an infographic that he could put on the screen, which would help maybe expedite this conversation. Is that?
I don't have it on me, Jessica. Were you able to share your
Okay.
screen?
I could. It give me 2 seconds.
Sure.
To get that pulled in front of me. My apologies. It's been a long evening for you all. I'm sure you just want to go home. I mean, I can simply say there's no reason not to vote for these. They're great little franchises, well negotiated by the team. Okay. Let's see here. Okay, can you all see that? Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so Ziply Fiber Pacific is the affiliate of Ziply Fiber Northwest, a local exchange carrier, an incumbent local exchange carrier serving approximately 40% of Washington. We have decided to expand our network beyond our traditional incumbent footprint. And there are multiple cities that are within the pathway of where our existing network our transport network exists. Late last year, Ziply Fiber was purchased by Bell Canada, and Bell Canada, being a publicly traded company, raises debt capital differently than we did as a private equity owned entity. So we formed a partnership, and that's the name NFC Northwest that you see on the second franchise you'll be considering this evening. When you think about this in terms of continuity of service from the internet all the way back to a customer's home, from the internet to a point of presence in the city of Lakewood, there will be a single line that will be owned by Ziply Fiber Pacific. It's actually a couple of different lines geographically dispersed, but you get the point. That's the connection out to the internet. Once we enter into the city and we distribute through the right of way, that section of the network would be owned by NFC Northwest. Now, what's a fun fact about NFC Northwest is that 49% of its ownership is Ziply Fiber. So it's really an investor's money, and the same group that would be doing all of the other work in the city under the name Ziply Fiber. That's the name that customers will see. That would be the only name that customers would interact with, because we'll be performing all the construction, maintenance, and operations of that network on behalf of the NFC Northwest. But because there are two separate entities funding this work, we do need two separate franchises. We'll be happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Vargas or Ms. Epley? Councilmember Branstad.
Ms. Epley, thank you for extending your day into this hour as well, to be able to do that. I'm not totally familiar with Ziply Fiber, and I'm wondering, Lakewood is a diverse community in many ways, to include having a significant number of low-income residents to do that. What sort of community engaging programs and helpful programs does Ziply Fiber, or would Ziply Fiber bring accessibility for Lakewood residents if you begin to deploy your infrastructure here?
Thank you very much for the question, Councilmember. We have the opportunity as an eligible telecommunications carrier to provide federal lifeline subsidies to qualified residents. So we have a low-income product that then receives a further subsidy, which we help connect the customer with through the Federal Communications Commission.
Okay, and that would be available to students like in the high schools from low-income families that want to be able to keep up with others by having this access in their residence.
Absolutely.
Okay, is that an easily qualifiable program, although there are qualifications?
It is, yes. In fact, there's a website where individuals can go and get pre-qualified, or when they contact Ziply for service, we can connect them and walk them through the process.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, Mr. Vargas, on to the next one.
Yep. So I'll go over, NFC Northwest franchise. Really, they're the exact same franchises. The council has seen this telecom template franchise throughout the last year on multiple occasions, such as Easy Fiber and Forged Fiber. Just to quickly go over some of the substantive clauses contained in both franchises. Under definitions, the city remains the definable entity when it comes to an emergency situation. This is very important to the city because we want to be able to control what is a emergency situation and what is not, because that ultimately controls who has to compensate back who for fixing a problem quickly, if you will. So we still control that. Construction and maintenance, this section still refers to our payment degradation fee as well as our 5-year cut and payment moratorium. If there's substandard work, that will be fixed within 5 days at the grantee's expense. Location and relocation of facilities, punchline remains, no new poles as applicable, and that the grantee may offer alternatives to relocation if their facilities need to be moved for a city project. As for the franchise term, we would like to keep an initial 5-year term with up to 3 5-year extensions for a potential of 20 years. When it comes to changing technology, keeping this sort of cadence when it comes to revisiting the franchise for telecom is important. As for undergrounding, the city may direct the franchisee to underground above ground facilities at no cost in lieu of relocating them. This is a pretty standard practice. For section 12, shared use excavation and trenches, it's much more efficient that, you know, if any entity, whether it's the city, the grantee, cuts into the pavement, that we should share that excavation to do work while we're down there. And that's what that states. Bond requirements are still the same in that they're set and approved by the Planning and Public Works Director. And for street vacations, the grantee must remove those facilities at no cost during a vacation, unless it is a condition of the vacation to allow them to remain. And that is contained, all of those are contained in both franchises. Yep.
Thank you very much. Do you have any, oh, Ms. Bell.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say thank you for, I think this is really great for our residents to have options now. So accessibility, that now we have, what, if we're gonna have Ziply, this, and then 7, I mean, I'm not gonna name them all, but I love that there's options for our community. So adding this, I think, is a positive move. Thank you.
We're all looking forward to having options here when it comes to our internet. I know I am. Anything else, Mr. Vargas? Thank you very much. These will be on the agenda next week. All right, thank you. So you see there, we have items for the scheduled for the Monday, March 16th, 2026 regular city council meeting and study session. We have a business showcase with Lakewood Auto Body. We do authorizing the execution of an agreement for the Camp Murray Boat Launch Master Plan. So we've been waiting. That's been under discussion now for, Councilmember Brandstetter could probably help me out of that, but we've been talking about that for a while. That might be a pre-COVID. The 2 franchise agreements, review of the 2026 Community Development Block Grant, CDBG Annual Action Plan, H-Barn update, and that's an important update. And by then we'll know whether or not we got some money from the state to help us with that. And Partners for Parks is still out raising money. I was at an event here recently where they spoke about that. And then the review of a resolution updating the city's purchasing policies. So, and we'll have a discussion surrounding that in the study session. So that's the 3rd week of the month. So that begins at 6 p.m. And I'm saying that really to remind myself that it's 6 p.m. Mr. Russell, do you have any city manager comments?
Yes, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and Council, just quickly highlight some of the neighborhood association meetings coming up. On Tuesday, the 10th, we have the Telecom neighborhood. On Wednesday, the 11th, the Downtown Association. And on Thursday, the 12th, Lake City. Next Tuesday, we have Custer Neighborhood Association. Not a neighborhood association, but on the 28th, we have Spring Cleanup. And you had mentioned earlier the Mayor's Coffee. That one will be April 1st. I think that program will be the Legacy Plan update. Did want to highlight that legislative session is coming to an end. That's already been talked about a little bit. Mayor talked about the millionaire's tax and kind of how that shifted over time to where that actually may end up being a reduction in revenues for municipalities. Well, they identify that they want to keep that to address it later on. How that's done, we don't know. Also want to mention, we are very cognizant of the IT issue, and there will be a proposal to upgrade that. That is not a give or take. We will be cautious of it, and honestly, as we go forward with revenue, so that might be a larger discussion in terms of how some other discussions end up, but incorporating really IT, audiovisual, and potential website upgrade as all part of some needed improvements through here. That's all I have, Your Honor, unless there's any questions.
Thank you very much, City Manager Russell. So council member comments, and then I will notice also that before we start our comments that we do have an executive session this evening. Right now it's posted as approximately 15 minutes. That means probably closer to 30, but you never know. So just keep that in mind. Councilmember Laura Sella, would you please start us off?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am excited to be here as long as it takes tonight. Really enjoyed the Lakewood Multicultural Coalition Gala on Saturday night, along with a couple fellow council members. Great event, as it is every year. Lots of people having a good time. Took home an interesting cake. But yeah, it was fun. Good people. I was unable to attend the Clover Park School District Board meeting tonight. I had a conflict, so hopefully things went smoothly, but we'll get a connection with them shortly to find out if we missed anything critical. Last week, I brought up to the city manager that our transportation projects in the city, our website has a 3-week look ahead, and it was great. We got an update that was added 1 extra week to the Nyanza project, but now that's out of date again. The 112th Street Gravely Lake to Bridgeport project is good. They've got a schedule that goes through the 20th, but the Nyanza project expired as of last Friday. So if we could get a full 3-week look ahead when we say we're doing 3 weeks, that would be helpful to our residents. As we talked about the sales tax considerations, I think it would be really beneficial to get a list of unfortunate options for either increased revenue or decreased expense alternatives to a sales tax increase. If that means looking at other public safety costs that we have, whether it's body-worn cameras or our flock system or a number of officers, it's not an easy conversation to have, but we need to be best representing the people of the city for the positions that we're in to make sure we're making the right decisions for them. A while back, we tasked city staff to help with a revenue analysis for potential cannabis sales. I haven't seen that come back yet, and I don't see it on the look ahead in our schedule. So it would be good to know when we're going to see that.
Yeah, we're incorporating new buffer sheets because the ones that had last time came around was 1,000 and 500, but buffer actually goes down to 100. So they're working on making those maps right now and getting the analysis of what you can expect, because naturally those will have limitations on the amount of revenue. So it is in the works.
Okay, thank you. And then the last piece is I will not be able to attend next week's meeting. So I will listen to it afterwards and provide some feedback ahead of time to the city manager for any critical issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Laura Sella. Councilmember Lindholm.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Really enjoyed Lakewood Rotary last Friday. Councilmember Brandstetter and I attended SHAPE. There's some interesting and important things I think we'll be having some discussions about here soon. Attended with Councilmember Talbot and Deputy Mayor Bell the Normal Heart at the Playhouse. It was the final performance. It was incredible. Their next show is going to be Pipeline, which I recommend you check out. I look forward to trying to attend the Lake City meeting this Thursday, as well as our own city manager's State of the City, which I believe is on Thursday at the Chamber. That's all, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Brandstetter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I enjoyed last week spending 4 days in a location with no internet. It was invigorating. The Lakewood Multicultural Coalition held their Claudia Thomas Gala Awards ceremony, and thank you for all those in the room who did attend. And with going on, the event was successful, and former Deputy Mayor Moss wanted me to make sure express thankful for the fact that the city was again a sponsor of the event, as they have been ever since it was inaugurated. And at that event, a group of students from the youth council were there, but to do that, the Lakewood First Lions Club board voted today that they're going to send a $1,000 grant to the youth council to go towards their costs for the youth summit that will be there. And so we'll be going off to do that. And then finally, with respect to youth, Mayor Boki has sent a letter nominating Isaiah from the president of the Youth Council for the Quality Community Scholarship at AWC. And if there is anyone that still wants to make a contribution to the Lakewood version of that scholarship, that would go to him regardless of whether he wins a scholarship at the state level, which I think he'll be very competitive for. I'm still collecting those funds so that I can write him a check this summer. And the Lions Club is already budgeted their portion of the dollars for half of that scholarship.
Thank you, Councilmember Brandstetter, for showing that again, like you have every year. And we've actually had several statewide winners, so that's been a lot of fun. So
Lakewood has actually had statewide scholarship recipients since the program began than any other city in the state. 9.
Oh,
I thought it was like 4 or 5.
I didn't think it was that many.
Just pointed out. That's cool.
Councilmember Talbot.
Thank you. I also, had a great time at the Multicultural Coalition celebration. And even in the previous weekend, I also did attend the Asian Pacific Cultural Center Lunar New Year celebration. And I just think that our support for those two organizations really do go far for them and the members in our community. So happy to be part of that. This week or I guess it's next week, Pierce County PCRC. I am not assigned to any of the neighborhood association meetings this week, but I would like to try to get to the Downtown Neighborhood Association. And I think regarding the comments tonight and the discussion tonight about just our construction projects, I really just do want to stress that if we can if we can ask our communications group to start to put our construction projects and noticing on the front page and make it very clear and visible and accessible, that really does go a long way for our businesses and our residents that are just trying to get information. So just like to plug that again, and thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for going to the Asia Pacific event. Councilmember Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, last night I attended the coaches meeting for the Lakewood Baseball Club. I'm coaching 8U and 6U, and along with my wife. So, but something I learned at that Lakewood Baseball Club is doing very well, keeping baseball affordable for youth, really getting it out there. And in fact, so much so that they have grown the club over the past few years where around the country, youth baseball clubs are dying off. And so they're doing excellent work there. It's a really great program and excited to be a part of it this year and coach some youngsters and yeah, spend some time out on the field.
It's great. Thank you for doing that. I never did coach baseball, and I'm glad I didn't because we might have had an incident. Anyway, Council or Deputy Mayor Bell.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, kind of ties in the coaching. So one of the people that was honored at the Lakewood Multicultural event was a coach, Coach Darwin. So he happens to track my daughter's track team. So he is wonderful. So the event was fabulous. So please, I did let Mary know that it was great. It was a great event for a great cause. I think it's really great to see the community come out. So I really appreciated that a lot. And it was nice seeing the youth council, like you mentioned, Member Brandstetter. Anything we can do to incorporate them and help support them, they really enjoy it. And I do hear that firsthand, so it's appreciated. Tomorrow I will be at the Tillicum neighborhood meeting. I think that starts at 6:30 at the community center. And I did attend the Lakewood Playhouse. It's great to support community events and different things, or small businesses and our arts around Lakewood, and that it's great that I can go see theater in Lakewood. I don't have to travel for it, and it was really great theater. So thank you again for the invite on that. I really enjoyed it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bell. A lot of great comments, and I do want to comment on that Lakewood Theater, which I need to make sure I go. The arts have not, the at least like local art stuff has never recovered from COVID. I just saw an article here where even the Broadway Theater or the Fifth Avenue Theater in Seattle sells about half the season tickets that they used to. Tacoma Arts Live is in real tough shape. And there's other things going on there, but it's just the fact that they're just, people just have not come back to the live local stuff that they have prior to COVID. So, thank you very much. I went to the Clover Park Rotary fundraiser on Friday night, and it was a lot of fun. And they hit on they hit on a number of things that we talk about almost daily, right? They give money to Partners for Parks for the barn, the H barn. They also give money. They're heavily involved because, of course, Alan Billingsley has made it really his life project to work on the game farm and really make that a nice community asset. So they support that, and there are a few other things that they're involved in. So just like the Lions Club and their generous gift, I mean, they really do play a really important role. Did go to a meeting at the Oak Brook School, attended by a few folks, and Chris was there from the city to talk to them about starting a community group in the Oak Brook neighborhood. So that's going to move forward. It was a productive discussion, and they have enough people, I think, to move forward. But there's some things they got to work through. So they agreed to keep moving forward on that. So hopefully we'll see something. And they've got that school that they can use, and I think that's a good location. With that, I'd like to announce that the City Council will recess into executive session for approximately 15 minutes pursuant to RCW 42.30.110, paragraph 1, subparagraph I, to discuss with legal counsel representing the agency litigation or potential litigation to which the agency, the governing body, or a member acting in an official capacity is or is likely to become a party when public knowledge regarding the discussion is likely to result in adverse legal or financial consequence to the agency. The city council is not expected to take action following the executive discussion session other than to adjourn the meeting, and we will need 15 minutes, so we'll adjourn until, let's just say we'll adjourn and from here until 10:05. Will that give us enough time? 10:05.
drive, but you also could